Beyond the Gates spoilers. The moment Anita Dupree receives the diagnosis, nothing in the room visibly collapses, yet everything she understands about time, control, and certainty subtly fractures. The words triple-negative breast cancer arrive without theatrical weight, delivered in measured clinical tones, but their meaning lands with brutal clarity. This is not a diagnosis that allows for optimism built on statistics or comfort drawn from predictable treatment paths. It is aggressive, volatile, and unforgiving, a form of cancer that does not respond to the usual hormonal therapies, a disease that does not negotiate. Anita understands this immediately, not because she panics, but because she has spent her entire life recognizing power structures, and this is one enemy that does not respect status, wealth, or preparation. In that instance, survival becomes uncertain not in an abstract way, but in a deeply personal one that forces her to confront the possibility that the future she assumed was guaranteed may now exist only in fragments. Vernon Dupree hears the same words, yet experiences them differently, as if the diagnosis has rewritten the meaning of every promise he ever made. He does not respond with denial or false reassurance, because he knows Anita too well for that. Instead, he absorbs the weight of the moment in silence, already calculating how to become the stabilizing force she will need before the world begins demanding answers they are not yet ready to give. Their marriage has always been built on shared resilience, on the understanding that strength does not require spectacle, and so they make an unspoken agreement in that moment to protect each other from the noise that will inevitably follow. Anita chooses to tell Vernon first, not because she fears being alone, but because she trusts him to sit with the truth without trying to fix it prematurely. Before the family is informed, before concern turns into panic and love becomes suffocating, Anita wants space to breathe inside this new reality, to understand who she is now that time no longer feels infinite. The severity of the diagnosis changes the emotional landscape entirely. Cancer is frightening enough, but triple-negative breast cancer introduces a harsher calculus, one defined by uncertainty and recurrence. Anita is fully aware that this is a disease known for returning even after aggressive treatment, a relentless reminder that survival is not a single victory but an ongoing negotiation. Yet, what unsettles her most is not the medical terminology or the statistical risks, but the way the diagnosis quietly challenges her identity. She has always been the anchor of the Dupree family, the woman whose presence provided warmth, authority, and a sense of continuity. To imagine a future where she might not occupy that role feels disorienting, not because she fears being forgotten, but because she fears what her absence would do to the people she loves. The idea that the family might one day gather without her laughter, without her guidance, without the emotional gravity she provides, is a thought she refuses to articulate aloud, even to Vernon. Still, the question lingers beneath the surface, unavoidable and deeply unsettling. Is the show preparing to remove Anita Dupree? The possibility hangs unspoken, heavy with implication. Beyond the Gates has never shied away from bold narrative choices, from destabilizing its own foundations in pursuit of emotional truth. Fans know this, and so does Anita within the logic of her own story. Her character is not peripheral, not expendable, but no one in this world is immune to loss. The thought that the community of Fairmont Crest might continue without her feels almost sacrilegious, as though removing her brightness would alter the entire emotional ecosystem of the show. Anita is not merely a matriarch, she is a moral compass, a source of resilience, and the emotional heartbeat of the Dupree legacy. To imagine the narrative without her is to imagine a colder, quieter world, one where warmth must be manufactured rather than naturally occurring. Yet Anita refuses to frame her remaining time, however long or short it may be, through the lens of fear. Instead, she arrives at a resolution that is both defiant and deeply human. If life has become fragile, then it must also become intentional. She decides that every day forward will be lived as if it matters more than the last, not because she believes it might be her final day, but because she understands now that none of her previous days were ever guaranteed either. This is not a reckless abandonment of responsibility or a descent into denial. It is a recalibration of values. Anita does not plan to withdraw from her family or isolate herself in quiet suffering. On the contrary, she intends to remain present, engaged, and emotionally available, even as she prepares for a battle she knows will test her body and spirit in ways she cannot yet fully anticipate. Her plan is not grandiose. There are no dramatic bucket lists or sudden, impulsive choices designed to shock those around her. Instead, Anita's resolve manifests in subtler ways, in a renewed attentiveness to moments she once took for granted. She listens more closely, laughs more freely, and allows herself moments of vulnerability she might previously have postponed in favor of composure. She understands that strength does not require emotional distance, and that allowing herself to be seen in moments of fear does not diminish her authority. In choosing to live fully while she still can, Anita is not surrendering to the disease. She is reclaiming agency in a situation that threatens to strip it away. The decision to delay informing the rest of the family is a deliberate one. Anita and Vernon need time not only to process the diagnosis, but to establish a shared emotional strategy before the inevitable wave of concern arrives. They know that once the truth is revealed, the family dynamic will shift irrevocably. Roles will blur, boundaries will soften, and fear will begin to influence decisions that were once made with confidence. Anita wants to enter that phase grounded, not reactive, secure in the knowledge that she and Vernon are aligned not just in their understanding of the medical reality, but in their approach to whatever comes next. This is not secrecy born of shame or denial, but a protective pause, a moment of quiet before the storm. As the days pass, the weight of the diagnosis does not lessen, but it transforms. It becomes a constant presence, neither overwhelming nor ignorable, shaping Anita's internal monologue in subtle ways. She finds herself reassessing memories, not with nostalgia, but with gratitude. She considers future milestones with a careful neutrality, allowing hope without clinging to it. There is no dramatic shift in her personality, no sudden recklessness, only a deepened sense of clarity about what matters and what does not. Petty conflicts lose their power. Unspoken resentments feel increasingly irrelevant. Anita does not rush to resolve every loose end, but she does become more honest with herself about which connections deserve her emotional energy. For the audience, this arc introduces a profound emotional tension that resists easy answers. The possibility that Anita Dupree may not survive is real, and the show does not offer false reassurance to soften that reality. Yet neither does it rush toward tragedy. Instead, it invites viewers to sit with uncertainty, to witness a woman confronting mortality without losing herself to it. Whether this storyline leads to Anita's departure or to an unexpected survival is deliberately unclear, and that ambiguity is precisely what gives the narrative its power. Life rarely provides clean resolutions, and Beyond the Gates has always thrived in the spaces where certainty dissolves. If the intention is to prepare fans for a world without Anita Dupree, then it is doing so not through spectacle, but through intimacy, allowing viewers to fall even more deeply in love with her before asking them to imagine letting her go. And if, instead, the story is about resilience, about confronting the most aggressive form of disease and refusing to be defined by it, then Anita's choice to live fully becomes an act of quiet rebellion against despair. Either way, the journey matters more than the outcome, because it reflects a truth that extends beyond the screen, that life is measured not only by its duration, but by the intention with which it is lived. As Anita stands on the threshold of treatment, surrounded by love she has not yet fully invited into the conversation, the future remains unresolved. There is no promise of victory, no certainty of loss, only the knowledge that each day ahead carries both risk and possibility. And perhaps that is the point the story is circling, without stating outright, leaving viewers to sit in the same uncertainty Anita now inhabits, aware that some battles cannot be predicted, only faced one deliberate, meaningful day at a time. When Anita Dupree finally chooses to tell the rest of her family, the moment is not marked by drama or raised voices, but by a profound shift in gravity. As if the emotional center of the room quietly realigns itself around her, the words land slowly, differently for each person, yet the result is the same, a collective instinct to close ranks, to protect, to remain present no matter how uncomfortable or frightening the truth may be. Anita does not frame her diagnosis as a tragedy, nor does she minimize its seriousness. She speaks with clarity and restraint, aware that how she delivers the information will shape how her family learns to live with it. What follows is not panic, but an almost reverent silence, one that communicates solidarity more effectively than reassurance ever could. From that moment forward, Anita is no longer carrying the weight alone, and yet the responsibility she feels toward those she loves only deepens. Support comes quickly and without hesitation. The family adjusts their routines, their priorities, and their expectations, forming an unspoken agreement that Anita's health will no longer exist at the margins of their lives. They do not smother her with fear, nor do they pretend optimism will be enough to shield her from what lies ahead. Instead, they show up consistently in ways that are practical, steady, and emotionally attuned. For Anita, this support is both a relief and a quiet burden. She draws strength from knowing she is not alone, yet she remains acutely aware that her illness has altered the emotional architecture of her family, introducing a vulnerability they cannot escape. She wonders, in moments she keeps to herself, whether this collective strength will be enough when treatment begins to test not just her body, but the emotional endurance of everyone around her. As the initial shock subsides, a more insidious fear begins to take shape, one that Anita cannot fully protect her family from. Triple-negative breast cancer is not only aggressive, but often associated with genetic risk, and this knowledge introduces a new layer of anxiety that settles particularly heavily on her daughters. Anita understands the implications immediately. The idea that her illness could echo forward, that it might place her children in danger simply by virtue of their shared biology, is almost unbearable. For a woman who has spent her life shielding her family from harm, the realization that she may be the source of a new threat is deeply destabilizing. She does not voice this fear openly, but it shapes her every thought, turning her concern outward, even as her own health demands inward focus. Despite this, Anita refuses to allow fear to dictate silence. She speaks honestly about risk, not to alarm, but to empower. She encourages her daughters to pursue genetic testing, routine screenings, and preventative care, framing these actions not as a sentence, but as an assertion of control in an uncertain landscape. Her message is clear: awareness is not surrender, and preparation is not the same as living in fear. Yet beneath this resolve lies a painful truth she cannot escape. No amount of vigilance can offer absolute protection, and the possibility that one of her daughters might one day face the same diagnosis remains an unspoken specter hovering at the edges of every conversation. For Anita, balancing her own recovery with the emotional needs of her family becomes an exercise in restraint. She knows she must conserve her energy, that treatment will demand physical and psychological resources she cannot afford to squander. And yet, her instinct is always to give more than she takes, to absorb anxiety so that others do not have to. This internal conflict becomes one of the defining tensions of her journey. She wants to heal, but she also wants to remain emotionally available, to reassure her children that she is still herself, still present, still strong. Learning to accept care without guilt is perhaps one of the hardest adjustments she must make, because it forces her to acknowledge limits she has never allowed herself to confront before. As treatment progresses, rumors and speculation inevitably surface beyond the immediate family. Questions arise, both within the world of the show and among those watching from the outside, about whether Anita Dupree is being written toward an exit. The narrative offers no definitive answer, and this uncertainty feels intentional. Beyond the Gates has always thrived on emotional realism rather than predictability, and in this case, realism means acknowledging that survival does not erase fear. Even as sources suggest that Anita will survive, that she will emerge from treatment with her life intact, the victory is deliberately incomplete. Survival, in this context, is not a return to normalcy, but an ongoing state of vigilance. Anita can never be declared fully cured. Remission becomes the best outcome she can hope for, a fragile ceasefire rather than a definitive end. The knowledge that recurrence remains a constant possibility reshapes her relationship with the future. She learns to live with a quiet watchfulness, to celebrate stability without assuming permanence. This is not a life defined by dread, but it is one informed by awareness. Each clear scan brings relief, but also a reminder that relief is temporary, that certainty is no longer part of the equation. For Anita, this means redefining what peace looks like, finding steadiness in moments rather than milestones. The possibility that one of her daughters could face the same diagnosis introduces a potential narrative turn that is as emotionally devastating as it is compelling. Anita cannot bear the thought of watching her child endure the physical and psychological toll she herself is fighting to survive. The idea that she might one day have to offer comfort from the other side of the disease, armed with knowledge she never wanted to possess, is almost more frightening than her own prognosis. And yet, if such a future were to unfold, Anita would not retreat. Her love for her family is not diminished by fear, it is intensified by it. She would fight not only for her own survival, but alongside her child, transforming shared suffering into shared resilience. What makes this storyline resonate is not the threat of death alone, but the way it interrogates the meaning of survival. Anita's journey is not about defeating cancer in a simplistic sense. It is about learning how to live fully in the presence of risk, how to remain emotionally generous without self-erasure, and how to protect those she loves without denying them agency. Her strength is not portrayed as invulnerability, but as adaptability, a willingness to confront fear without allowing it to dictate her identity. As the story continues, Anita remains surrounded by family, held up by a network of love that is genuine, imperfect, and deeply human. Whether that support will be enough is not a question with a fixed answer. Some days it feels sufficient, even overwhelming in its generosity. Other days, the weight of uncertainty presses in, reminding her that no amount of love can eliminate risk entirely. And yet, Anita persists, choosing to believe that presence matters, that preparation is a form of hope, and that loving her family fiercely is worth the pain that such love inevitably invites. In the end, Anita Dupree stands as a character suspended between survival and vigilance, between relief and fear, between strength and vulnerability. Her story does not offer easy reassurance, nor does it collapse into despair. Instead, it occupies the uncomfortable, honest space in between, where healing is possible but never guaranteed, and where the greatest act of courage is continuing to love, to plan, and to hope, even when the future refuses to offer clear promises.